Hello everyone. This video I've titled An Unpopular Opinion. And this is a response to a couple of videos, one from the YouTuber Armchair Violence, the recent Blood and Iron video about HEMA being broken, and finally Fight Breakdown's take on Blood and Iron's video. And there's an argument about HEMA and how to make it popular, how to make it mainstream. And that, oh, well, we need more martially valid hits to make the fighting interesting for people so they'll get involved and want to watch and pay for seats at competitions and we can make money that way. And the reason I say it's an unpopular opinion, what I have to say, is going to be based on Eastern martial arts and a movie called Bloodsport. And probably most of you are familiar with that movie, but there's a quote in it that I want to say, and that is, the kumite is for the fighters. It's not for the people who read newspapers. And that quote kind of sums up a lot of what I'm going to say. That is that when it comes to what we do in tournaments and things like that, and how we can make this quote unquote more mainstream, it's not the martially valid hits, as Blood and Iron tries to point out, that would make it more attractive. Ultimately, if you wanted to fill seats at a tournament or any type of fight, you would need to have some sort of entertainment value. And that entertainment value comes from either A, interaction, dialogue. And in tournaments, we don't really do that, and it's kind of hard to do with all the gear and equipment we have on. The other thing is the concept of the violence itself. This is why Bohurt has a little bit of that popularity, because we can imagine, as someone sitting in the seats, we imagine what it feels like to be in that armor, to get hit, because we can hear the sounds. We can see the action. And the truth of the matter is, the people in armor, while they can get injured, it quote unquote hurts far less than what we perceive it to hurt because we're not wearing the armor. As someone who does harness fecting, I've gotten hit before, and it can be loud and people can see me. I've fallen several times. And when someone sees you fall, they go, oh my gosh, they must be horribly injured. And the truth of the matter is, you're barely injured at all. Your ego is hurt far more than your body is. But to someone who's casually looking at it, it looks very extreme. And it's that brings that primitive sense of brutality and violence that makes it entertaining. When you're wearing full HEMA gear, a bunch of plastic, for lack of a better term, some steel, and it doesn't matter how you hit someone, you can kind of tell you're not really being violently injured. We can imagine what the strikes would do, but to a casual observer, it doesn't really mean that much. You know who it means a lot to? Us, the people doing it, because we understand what it takes to do those things. We are an educated audience. And for an uneducated audience, there's little interest in seeing us fight. And you'll never generate that kind of income of, oh, well, what if a tournament had, 1,000 people watching? Well, they're not going to be interested as a mainstream unless we either explain to them what we're doing, which, in Bohurt, you'll oftentimes see tournaments where they'll have people at a table commenting. And that's what educates the uninitiated to what they're doing actually in the ring. And HEMA, for the most part, we could explain it, but the minute we tried to really explain what was going on, why is this martially valid, why is this, it would lose its entertainment value. It then becomes a bunch of nerds talking about stuff that really isn't important. What we want to see is the person hit the other person. What we want to see is the consequence of that action if we were as an uneducated audience. So you're not going to do that. And also with events like the big Battle of the Nations events, things like that, it's not that people are there strictly for the fighting. Some people are there, quite frankly, for the drinking. If you go to a Ren fair and someone's doing a martial tournament or something like that, some people are there to hang out with their friends, to have a good time, to go out into the sunshine and get away from their daily grind. What they're not really invested in is us as fighters. And you can't really make these kind of events that would sell seats and somehow make us all rich and famous. If you want to be rich, you could become like Jamie Dimon or Blankfeld, I forget his first name. Those people are rich. You probably don't know who they are. If you want to be famous, you could do what Brad Pitt or what George Clooney did. And you could become movie stars. But HEMA's not going to make you rich. HEMA's not going to make you financially rich. And it's not going to make you famous. You do it because you want to do it. And most of us are doing this, paying fees to be a part of clubs, going to tournaments and stuff, because we want to do it. As I said, the Kumite, or in our case, HEMA and HEMA sparring tournaments, are for the fighters. They're not for the people who read newspapers. They're not for an audience, nor should they really be. If you want to do that, that's fine, Get involved in stage combat. I used to work for the New Jersey Renaissance Fair. And yeah, there would be people who would cheer. There would be kids that would come up to me to see the armor and have me explain how the armor works. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do and you want to be entertained and valued by crowds, get involved in stage combat. When I do public events, and we do a couple over the course of the year, largely it's either to educate people or it's to help recruit for membership. And I'm doing an event in February where the goal for me and for my club is really, hey, let's get this in front of people and find that maybe in a room of 30, 40, 50 people drinking, watching, fighting and stuff, I might find 2 or 3 people that say, yeah, I want to do that. I want to be able to fight with swords. And then say, hey, welcome. Come join us. Come be a part of the HEMA community. Learn about swords. Learn how to truly fight with swords and other medieval and Renaissance weapons. The goal isn't, okay, I'm going to do this and all of a sudden I'm going to become rich because I'm going to be fighting in front of crowds and they're going to pay money to see me fight. That shouldn't really be our goal. I think on the other hand, HEMA and why I do it is for what I would call the virtues of HEMA. And there are a lot of really good virtues to HEMA. And that's what we should, in theory, be espousing to. Not necessarily the medals and the tournaments. I think that sparring is important. I brought a lot of, a lot of sparring wasn't being done when I first came into the club that I'm with now, but we definitely changed that over time. But really, the greatest benefits of HEMA and the reasons that people should be involved in HEMA have to do with its virtues. And that's actually what I want to talk about. The first virtue of HEMA is mentorship. In a world that's largely digital, having one-on-one communication with my students and also the people that I've learned from has been invaluable. It's personal interaction time in a world, in a post-COVID world where people interact virtually. Having people that you actually talk to in person in real time. The second virtue of HEMA is discipline. Honestly, if you're going to be good, you've got to train, you've got to work out, you've got to commit yourself to a degree of physical health. And when I started HEMA, one of the reasons I did it was I hadn't been terribly active, especially during COVID, but even in the time before that, I'd been grown kind of lazy. And committing myself to a regular practice, to getting fit to be in that practice, to making myself better, that's a big virtue of HEMA. And I think that's beneficial potentially for a lot of people. Next is the idea that in HEMA we help and we inspire others. So by whether or not when I'm at a practice I'm fighting other people, but I'm also at the end of a match, if I've done very well, I will try to tell my opponents what I saw, how they could improve. They do the same for me if they manage to beat me in a fight. And it's a mutual community of people trying to improve each other. And if you're doing this in your club, you'll find value in that. Next is the sense of community. And I hear this thrown around a lot, but for me personally, when we live in a largely virtual world where we might meet people by seeing their YouTube videos, seeing their posts on Facebook or Instagram, we don't get a sense for who they are. And going out to tournaments gives me the opportunity to meet different people, people I would never be able to meet otherwise, people from different places. And I've met some wonderful people. I've met some less than wonderful people too, don't get me wrong. But I've gotten to meet some really, really interesting people by being a part of HEMA, by going out to tournaments, and even within my own club, getting to know different people in that HEMA community. And in a world of increasing loneliness because people feel separated, I think that's a really important virtue of HEMA, that it gives us opportunities to meet and interact with people in real time, in real space, not online. Though the online community, just like you're watching this video, can be useful too. I think the better part of it is that we do, and we can't do HEMA without that personal interaction. That's a huge virtue of HEMA. The ideas between the mentorship, the community, the striving to make yourself a better person, these are all the reasons we should be, selling and promoting HEMA as to what its virtues are. On the other side of it, we have some other benefits. I don't know that they're always virtues, but it's fun. HEMA done well, it should be fun. If it all seems like work and grind, then maybe we're doing the wrong thing. It should have an element of fun. I think another virtue is forced me to learn. I've probably bought more books on HEMA and read more books on HEMA, just read more books in general, far more since I started HEMA than before I was doing it. So the opportunity to really take the time to learn and improve yourself. I talked a little bit about improving ourselves through discipline and training, but also through reading and learning. And these are things we can apply to other parts of our life outside of HEMA. If we start looking at why someone should do HEMA, why they should be interested, and start taking the virtues of having a community, of learning to interact with other people, of meeting new people, of growing as fighters, and use that as the reason to be successful, HEMA as a whole will be successful and it will grow. It won't grow by everyone trying to make a buck off it. No one's going to get rich. No one's going to become a billionaire because they're the best, they're the top-ranked HEMA person. At best, most people who make money at HEMA are those who get into supplying the gear for HEMA. And even they'll tell you, hey, I'm not rolling in money by doing it. You're not going to roll in money by being a HEMA promoter. You know, if you just ran events, you might make a living, maybe, but you're not going to ever be Jeff Bezos rich by doing that. If you want to be rich, do something else. This is not the place for you. Just like, as I said, HEMA is a place for the fighters, not for the people that read newspapers, not for those who really aren't interested and somehow we're going to make them interested so they'll pay money to see us and then we'll be rich and famous. We might be famous amongst ourselves. You and I probably know, we know of Matt Easton. But if I ask a regular person, regular Joe down the road, hey, you know Matt Easton? They're probably going to be like, who? Well, okay, you don't know Matt Easton. How about Martin Fabian? Everyone knows Martin Fabian. Who? We're only famous within our own context. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, if your goal is to be famous, you're not going to do it. And this is not going to ever be Monday Night Football in the sports world. We're a niche thing. We're not that interesting, and that's okay, because we're very interesting to us. And there are other people who can become us. Our newcomers, how we welcome them, how we bring them into HEMA, they'll be that generation that are interested in our accomplishments. So, once again, it might be an unpopular opinion, but HEMA isn't broken. HEMA isn't necessarily going to ever be the great sport that everyone wants to do, because it is the sport of knights and kings, right up there with jousting. And it's not for everyone. And that's okay. Because those who it is for, those who can see the benefits of HEMA, that sense of community, that sense of self-improvement, that opportunity to have fun, those virtues in and of themselves will keep HEMA being popular amongst that crowd, and will have values and virtues for those that are open to entering the world of HEMA. So once again, I want to thank you for your time. Might be an unpopular opinion, and you can feel free to leave comments below. If you're particularly rude, I'll delete them. But as long as you're civil, I welcome you to do so, and I will see you in the next video.